Hey, guys, welcome back to my channel. This is a story of what if Naruto trained seriously, after the Sasuke retrieval arc. After Naruto and Sasuke's fight at the Valley of the End, Naruto has an epiphany, and everything he thought about changes. Now during his training trip with Jiraya, the blonde trains like crazy, returning to the village, 2.5 years later, as a new shinobi. One who vows to protect the village even if it costs his life. However, those who knew his usual nature wished he didn't change. Before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, it means a lot to me, and check the description for the creator of this great fanfic. Now let's start the story. Chapter 8 Understanding one another. A few days went by since the group set trip once more, and their destination was a place Jiraiya knew that would be splendid for Naruto to learn how to temper with the water element. The perverted Sannin, though, wanted to keep it a secret from his traveling peers, even though both Naruto and Yugo kept asking questions about it. The woman was fairly certain they were heading to water country because of the direction they were taking, but while she knew its geography, the country itself was foreigner to her. All she knew was that water country, just like fire country, has its own hidden ninja village, called Kurigakure. Right now, the group found a little cottage on the way and decided to rest a little bit, before setting foot once more towards Jiraya's destination. Taking advantage of the situation, Naruto chose to perform one special exercise he learned from Sojiro-sensei. While Yugo and Jiraiya were talking about Konoha a bit, the blonde took a sit on the ground, before crossing his legs in a sort of meditation position. He, then, closed his eyes and positioned his hands on the ram seal in order to mold the necessary chakra for this technique to work. Suddenly, the wind suffered a major shift around Naruto as he continued to focus on molding the Fuden-type chakra around and also beneath him. While the blonde was attempting the exercise, the excessive usage of chakra alerted Yugo and Jiraiya, who, then, stopped what they were doing and looked at the blonde to see what was going on with him. The woman was puzzled about the whole ordeal, but she had a feeling that the pervert knew what the blonde was doing if his smile was any indication. This is an exercise Naruto learned from a friend of mine, regarding the usage of Fuden chakra. In a couple minutes, you'll see a very surprising feat, smiled Jiraiya as he managed to spike Yugo's curiosity. A while later, just like the Sannin predicted, the woman watched in amazement, as Naruto suddenly lifted off the ground and started levitating slowly. She looked at Jiraiya with a dumbfounded look, which to the man, was obvious that she was demanding an explanation as to how he managed to levitate by just using chakra alone. By focusing Fuden chakra on certain tenketsus, Naruto can propel his body off the ground and be able to maintain a constant flow of chakra in order to maintain his position for some time. My friend saw his chakra abundance and taught him this exercise. It consists on a very advanced exercise of chakra control. By practicing it, not only can Naruto expand his chakra capacity, which is already big by the way, he can also improve his elemental chakra control to the point of knowing just the exact quantity of chakra to be used for each technique, explained Jiraiya as he kept watching the blonde performing admirably. Yugo, on the other hand, wondered about the Fuden element and its peculiarities. I happened to come across some Fuden users back in Anbu, but since it requires a heavy load of chakra, no one actually favors using the element alone from fear of losing chakra in the midst of battle. Naruto, on the other hand, doesn't even seem fazed by using so much. How long can he hold this technique until he grows tired? Asked Yugo, though she never took her eyes away from the blonde while talking to the Sannin. Normally, in about 10 or 15 minutes, he stops and you can see drops of sweat from his face, however, that happened 2 months ago. Nowadays, I wouldn't be surprised if he managed to uphold the 20-minute barrier and not even show any hints of tiredness, explained Jiraiya, earning a nod from Yugo as she crossed her arms. After that, no more conversation was shared between the two as Yugo just stared at the blonde performing the exercise. In the short time, she got to meet the blonde. Surprised was a word that could describe what she was feeling at the moment. While she didn't think of labeling him as the demon he keeps prisoner, she actually thought people disliked him because of the unknown number of pranks he'd always pull when he was young. However, after spending some time with him, she found the boy to be quite entertaining and fun to hang out with, not to mention the fact that sparring with him, on occasions, managed to drift away her angst, somewhat. After the group left, Jiraiya would set Naruto and Yugo against each other on just weapons fight, and while Naruto was nowhere near Yugo's level of proficiency, he managed to tire the woman out because of his stamina. Because of this, Yugo found herself sleeping better than before, whether it was because of the new company or said company tiring her down to near unconsciousness, she wasn't aware, but either way, she was thankful for the first time she was able to close her eyes at night and open them the next day, since her fiancé died. Of course, the nightmares still occurred from time to time, but they were less frequent as her body had to replenish its energy. Also, as far as conversations went, Naruto and Yugo would often exchange some battle experiences, and Naruto would share information about the new generation of Konoha's ninja force, namely Konoha 11, of course being 11 since the Uchiha traitor decided it was better to go kiss some snake's ass than remaining in the village, slowly building his reputation. 15 minutes passed and both Jiraiya and Yugo felt the wind returning to normal and Naruto landing on the ground before getting up and turned to look at his audience. "I wasn't aware I was performing a show here," commented Naruto as he got up and adjusted his clothes, before approaching the other two. "With that much chakra being used at once, I'm rather surprised we're the only two watching Brat. I can see you got better than last time. I can see, as well, that you're not as tired as before," said Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto. "I'm actually a little bit winded, but certainly not as bad as before. So, can we go already or is there a need to rest a little bit more?" asked Naruto, but was surprised when Yugo showed an amused grin, but kept to herself, though. It surely was a first, Naruto and Jiraiya thought. Upon questioning as to the motive, she simply explained that when it comes to training, Naruto could be rather impatient, which earned a snicker from Jiraiya and a frown from Naruto. It didn't take long until the group set foot outside once more, heading towards where Jiraiya wanted to go. During the way, Yugo was examining Naruto's bow staff a little bit, as in administering its weight and how Naruto could perform faster movements with it. Naruto, meanwhile, was watching Yugo's analytical eyes with enthusiasm. Discussing certain aspects about weapons certainly perked the blonde's interest, and he wanted to know more about how to treat your weapon as if it was your own limb. Yugo was content enough to explain some things to him, since, even though he was outright eager to learn more about it, never once did he demanded or acted like a child pouting about wanting to learn more about it. After throwing the staff from one hand to another, she then gave it back to Naruto, who, then, used chakra to short the staff's length and place it on his back, before he paid attention to the weapon user. "Your weapon is well balanced and not very heavy, allowing you to minister faster movements which would disorient the enemy. However, Naruto, you must take into account that every weapon has its weakness. The katana, for example, is weak against multiple opponents, so it takes much of the user's skills to be able to take on against a group of enemies, whereas with the staff, you're better equipped to fight them together. Being that said, the bow staff fails when it comes to speed and agility and moves. You do remember how I managed to enter your defense so easily, right?" asked Yugo, before Naruto nodded and she continued with her assessment. "So in order for you to eliminate this weakness is to predict my movements and act accordingly." "How can I predict your movements? I only act once I see your intentions," replied Naruto, not sure if he understood the concept behind using the weapon as an extension of his body, and Yugo felt certain that the blonde was in the right track here, albeit a little uncertain of his skills. "Naruto, that's what it means to use the weapon as if it was an extension of your body. In plain taijutsu or even ninjutsu match, mostly it's your instincts that guide you. With it, you're able to start hand seals just because the opponent started walking towards you, or you raise your arm in defense when your instincts tell you to, even though you didn't actually see the enemy move. Everything is purely based on instinct. Don't worry, though, when this training is over, your body will be predisposed to move accordingly to the enemy's movements," smiled Yugo to her new student. Naruto for his part was quite beamed at the possibility of learning from a person like Yugo. Her skills with the sword was unheard of, at least as far as the blonde's knowledge went, and the fact that she was more than willing to teach him was a plus in his opinion. "Nay, Yugo-san, I understood from the pervert over there, that you're also a water user. Is it so hard to master? I mean, because of the fact that it's not my affinity and all?" asked Naruto, earning a nod in the positive from Yugo. "I wouldn't say hard per se, it's just time demanding, that's all." You can grasp the theory easy enough. The problem is that, since it isn't your affinity, your body would take more time to adjust than you normally have with food and techniques. Once again, though, don't worry about time, because we've got plenty to get you in shame regarding the bow staff and Sweden ninjutsu. Explained Yugo. She, then, saw the beaming smile from the blonde and couldn't help but smile as well. Jiraya explained to her how nice it's to teach someone like Naruto because he would absorb everything like a sponge, and also because of his chakra capacity, he could go on and on until he managed to master the exercise. Not to mention the strange but nice feeling deep inside her heart when she sees him working hard to overcome obstacles that only someone with a Junin level of chakra capacity could undertake. Say Naruto, I never got to know much about you, except your skills as a shinobi. And you seem an interesting character, so you don't mind if I asked some questions about you, do you? Asked Yugo, before seeing a smirk on his face, followed by a nod. After getting the authorization, the woman began bombarding the blonde with questions regarding many aspects, like his view of the village, his dreams for the future, people he knew, including those he worshipped, and of course, those he wouldn't lift a finger to help. Naruto explained every question with details, going from how he adored Konoha and its sights from the Hokage monument. He described about his favorite place and favorite activity, which was watching the sun setting down. He, then, explained what used to be his dream, to which Yugo offered her surprise since rarely a person ever dreamed about being the Hokage, before he explained that he didn't have that dream any longer, which once again surprised the woman, before she asked why. I just don't know what it takes to be a Hokage anymore, and I don't even know if I'll have what it takes to be one as well. As we grow up, we slowly drift away from our childhood dreams. We kill, we cope with it, and we move on, but our scars remains vivid within our minds until the day we're taken from this world. For instance, you could tell that Itachi's dream was to kill his entire clan and become a member of the strongest organization in the elemental nations. My dream, now, is to be able to take the opportunities that lay before me and seize it the best way possible, explained Naruto, not even aware of the fact that the woman next to him was looking at his face as if the blonde didn't even existed. Jiraiya, though, heard everything and sighed in sadness since Naruto learned the harsh truth of the ninja world far too soon for his liking. But he said nothing as he continued walking, just as he heard Yugo manifest. For you to speak like that, means that you've been through a harsh experience as a shinobi. Care to enlighten me? I mean, if it, not personal and everything, asked Yugo, before seeing the blonde negating with his head and explain about what happened on the day he and a couple of his peers tried bringing Uchiha Sasuke back. Yugo, then, heard about how eager the Uchiha, as Naruto often called him, was to obtain power, going as far as betraying the village by joining with Orochimaru. As she heard everything, she couldn't help but flinch at the notion of being hit dead on by Kakashi's signature technique, the Chidori, right on the chest. She was wondering how the hell Naruto was still alive, but she remembered the fox inside his stomach and figured it had something to do with it. In the end, Sasuke left me to die, and if it wasn't for Kakashi-sensei helping me, I'd be dead long time ago. Since then, I decided that a major change in my life was due. Improving on areas I failed at the academy was the first step, said Naruto as he continued talking while Yugo just listened intently, while absorbing everything about Naruto's life. She smiled when the blonde explained to her about his idol being the Sandaime and the Yondaime Hokage, explaining how much he wanted to be in the same level of skills in the future. She didn't need to hear about the person the blonde loathed, since it was pretty clear from what happened at the mission to retrieve Sasuke. All in all, though, even if she never once heard he speak the fox's name, she was fairly certain that the blonde went through a lot ever since he graduated at the academy. Obviously, there were other less fortunate than him in the shinobi regard, like those born in the midst of war, but Naruto managed to gather a great deal of experience. Say Yugo-san, said Naruto, earning the woman's attention before the blonde started the conversation once more. While growing up, I managed to figure that shinobis in general has different ways to cope with their pain of loss, and I was wondering if Kakashi-sensei, when he was at the Anbu, arrived late for his meetings. When we started as genins, I always thought he did it just to piss us off, but one time I saw him staring at that rock that contained the name of the shinobis that lost their lives in the line of duty, asked Naruto, earning a sad smile from the woman as she remembered her discussion with her ex-Anbu captain the day of the Sandaime's funeral. Flashback on music. Hokage's funeral. Playing. Konoha was suffering from the heavy rain that fell right after the Sandaim's funeral started. To almost everyone in the village, Sarutobi Hiruzen was considered the sole bearer of the will of fire, and because of his passing, even the sky was crying. Every shinobi in the village gathered in front of the administration building in order to offer their final gift to a man that managed to protect everyone until his last dying breath. On the other side of the village, though, two elite shinobis were giving their prayers to long-lost comrades and dead fiancé. Kakashi was with his hands on pockets as he stared at the monument that held the names of those that passed away while on a mission or defending the village from the enemy. "Kakashi-senpai, did you come here for Obito-san?" asked Yugo as she saw him get up and walk away, while she approached and knelt on the ground in order to pray for her dead fiancé. "Hurry up, the Sandaim's funeral is about to start," said Kakashi as he turned and looked at the Hokage monument as Yugo finished her praying and turned to address the silver-haired Junin. "You should stop making excuses for being late and come here earlier, Kakashi-senpai," commented Yugo as she got up and looked at the man while waiting for reply. "I already have, but every time I come here, I just feel like beating my former self to the ground," said Kakashi before he started walking towards the place where the Sandaim's funeral was being held. Flashback off. "I cannot tell much about what happened to senpai, from fear of losing his trust in me. If you want to know about it, you can try to ask him about it." However, back in Anbu, he coped differently than nowadays. Kakashi became a legend in the Anbu forces because he decided that going on death-like missions would take his attention away from what happened to him. On several occasions, he'd return from a mission covered in blood and bruises, explained Yugo, with a lost look on her face, but Naruto was oblivious to this whole ordeal as he processed the story. "Sounds like he's been through a lot, then. Thanks for explaining it to me, Yugo-san. I guess a part of me always wanted to know about him, but I never pushed myself to ask him about it," said Naruto as he looked further to Jiraya's back. Suddenly, the perverted stopped in his tracks, while waiting for Naruto and Yugo to stop next to him, so that he could show the place where they would expend the rest of the trip. When Naruto and Yugo appeared, their eyes were plugged from their faces as they witnessed maybe the most beautiful scenery nature is able to produce. It consisted of a wide lake surrounded by a couple of mountains that were responsible for dividing an even bigger river rapid, thus creating a great ordeal of three amazing waterfalls. Try imagining similar scenery to Niagara Falls. The sheer pressure of the waterfall hitting the lowest river was enough to create a reverberating sound that would echo throughout the field, and Naruto was already gulping in anticipation from having to get near those waterfalls. Welcome to Water Country's Taki no Sanpasu, Waterfall of the Three Paths. Its creation was due to seismic activities a long time ago. History showed that this scenery's creation never stopped changing since a long time ago and even now is on the verge of changing. "Naruto, this place is perfect for you to learn how to use Suiden jutsus," smiled Jiraiya, until the blonde asked him why and he explained. "I'll explain later, but by the end of our time here, you'll be able to reverse the current as it's required of a Suiden master. Once you become adamant on using Suiden chakra, you'll proceed to reversing the river's current and maintain it for the duration of 1 minute. Mind you that this exercise is extremely difficult and you'll only be attaining this because of your high chakra capacity. Any other genin or even chunin would be hard-pressed to hold it for a couple of seconds, before his or her chakra capacity would run dry. I bet even you Yugo-san would have trouble reversing the current for 1 minute. With my chakra, I managed to go up to 3 minutes, smiled Jiraiya as he jumped from the mountain they were standing and fell on an open space near the river's margin, before he proceeded to untie his belongings and set out their camp. Only after Naruto and Yugo landed as well, did Jiraiya start explaining something about the terrain. "Well, of course water won't be an issue for us, but food will. This river is filled with salmon, however they're used to swimming against the current and will be extremely hard to catch them. Also, hunting animals down these parts won't be an option, because as you can see, there isn't much habitat down here, except for the salmons. Naruto, you'll be in charge of catching the salmons for us every day, think of as endurance training," ordered Jiraiya, earning a frown in dismay from the blonde who was wondering how the hell does filling the pervert's stomach could help him train. "Easy there, brat, I'll explain my idea. When you're fishing for salmon, your body will be dragged by the current down the river. You can maintain your position, though, by applying chakra to your limbs and using them to stay put or even manage to swim against it when you're strong enough, explained Jiraya before he saw the blonde give him a nod, albeit not so satisfactory. Seeing as the sun was setting, Jiraya postponed Naruto's training for the next day, considering the fact that training in such a dangerous environment at night wasn't a very safe thing to do. Tampering with the lake's strong currents without supervision could hurt the blonde. So, that left with the group leaving the camp in order to find some fruit for them to eat. A couple of apples and bananas were found and they left with nothing but fruit for dinner, since neither Jiraiya nor Yugo felt like diving into the river to catch some salmon, to which Naruto verbally protested, saying that when push comes to shove and he isn't in any shape to go fishing, then one of them would have to do the deed. Of course, Yugo joked that she would offer him some chakra pills to replenish his health in order for him to go fishing, a motion seconded by Jiraiya who, in turn, appreciated the woman's quick thinking. After dinner, the three set out 2 tents, seeing that they now have a lady with them and sleeping together wasn't in Yugo's plans, especially with the pervert around. The next day after more fruit for breakfast, Jiraiya, Naruto and Yugo went to walk on water in order to feel exactly what's like to balance themselves on top of the river rapids. Yugo and Jiraiya didn't have much trouble because of their experience, but they could very well see that Naruto was focusing very hard to walk normally, which was expected seeing as this was the first time Naruto ever had to walk on top of such strong currents before. After a while, the group stopped in the middle of the lake and Jiraiya began to explain Naruto's training regimen from now on. Naruto, we have 1 year and a half to teach you how to handle Suidan ninjutsu. We also need to perfect your Fudan affinity as well as your weapon fighting skills. Here's what you're going to do every day, starting today. During the morning period, you'll be with Yugo here sparring with her using weapons. The goal here is to be on par with her skills by the end of this trip. Explained Jiraiya, but was cut short when Naruto protested. Excuse me Ero-sensei, but what you mean being on par with Yugo's skills? She is the best Kenjutsu user in Konoha and when we fight, I couldn't even see her moving correctly, much more managing to reach a level of elite Junin, said Naruto, earning a smile in appraisal from the woman and a smirk from Jiraiya, but he proceeded nonetheless. That's exactly what I meant, Naruto. Of course skills of her caliber would take a while for you to reach, however you forgot that time doesn't apply to you the same way. We'll be training for 1.5 years, which to you, can go up to 4 years using only 4 kage bunshin. Surely, you understand this right Naruto, concluded Jiraiya, before he continued with the training regimen. In the afternoon, you'll be mastering your Fudan chakra and we're going to practice it during fighting situations that will include both me and Yugo here. Afterwards, you'll receive lessons regarding introduction to Suidan chakra while getting adjusted to practicing on top of these troubled waters. In no time, you'll adapt and we'll proceed to fighting on the water, using not only weapons, but jutsus as well. By the time you manage to finish learning how to use Suidan chakra, we'll move on to a couple of Suidan techniques I plan to teach you, of course followed by some offensive ones as well. Well, that's about it, any questions? Said Jiraiya, before he saw Naruto negate with his head. This new method of training was insane, Naruto wondered. No matter, though, cause it would be just another of his achievements in the future. After the method was explained, the three went to shore, before getting out of the river. Jiraiya, then, stepped out of the way as Naruto and Yugo picked up their respective weapons so that the training could begin. Naruto, before we begin, I'll ask you to clear your mind out of any thoughts that could influence you in this fight. In order for you to let your instincts guide you, your mind will have to be clear, okay? Asked Yugo, before she charged Naruto head-on with the intent to attack his sternum. Before Naruto managed to defend the strike by positioning his bow staff accordingly, but instead of only defending, he pushed the sword backwards with force, intending to temper with Yugo's equilibrium, being unsuccessful, however, since Yugo absorbed the impact and managed to defend Naruto's quick strike on her chest. Upon seeing his attack flustered, Naruto positioned his bow staff on top of his shoulders and began twirling straight at Yugo, leaving her no alternative other than to jump back since a lone ninjutsu wouldn't be able to parry the attack. After stopping the attack, Naruto grabbed the end of the staff and swung it vertically, aiming for the girl's hand, before Yugo evaded the technique and landed a powerful kick to Naruto's abdomen, sending him flying while holding his stomach as a pathetic attempt to stop the pain. After managing to land on his feet, despite the pain, Naruto suddenly felt the need to kneel because of the pain in his stomach. He grudgingly got up as the pain eased a little bit, before looking at Yugo, who was only waiting for him to return to the fight once more. Her fighting stance was already in position, never once underestimating Naruto, even though he was just an ant in comparison with her. Just by looking at her like that, Naruto respected her skills. However, he had a goal to achieve, and that meant being on par with her in skills by the end of the training trip, so it was time to use some chakra to aid him. Focusing some towards his legs, his speed was now doubled as he was right in front of her in seconds, thus surprising Yugo momentarily, before she adjusted to his speed and managed to parry his advance by positioning her foot right in between Naruto's legs, thus tempering with his balance, before she positioned her sword inches away from his jugular, leaving him no alternative other than yield. Using chakra was good and all, but speed itself is useless if you lack the skills to predict my movements. What you must learn, Naruto, is that, different from taijutsu, you have to remain some distance from your opponent. Because if not, he will do exactly as I did, except he won't have any interest in keeping you alive, understood? Asked Yugo, earning a nod from Naruto, before they started the spar once more. At the end of the second year with time, their fights improved in quality and Naruto was able to parry Yugo's movements a lot better, even managing to catch her by surprise from time to time. Regarding Fuden ninjutsu, Jiraya had to give it to the blonde. In just about every jutsu he used against the blonde, Naruto had a counter for him by dodging fairly quickly and then doing hand seals with enough speed that before Jiraya even finished his jutsu, Naruto would already send either a wind sword jutsu at him or a wind gale palm jutsu, being the fastest ones available in his arsenal. The blonde even managed to create a new technique that is even faster and similar to the Kaden Hausenka no jutsu. By focusing Fuden chakra to his lungs in intervals, Naruto learned that he could expel wind shots from his mouth, and Jiraiya had to use a very powerful Doden defense so as not to be pierced by the blonde's technique, which was called Fuden Kase Tama, wind release, wind shot jutsu. His stamina also improved by so many times wrestling against the strong currents as well as catching the fast-swimming salmons, to which Naruto cursed their very existence from not even bothering the fast currents. One time, after he went out of the water with a bucket of salmons, he could have swore that Yugo looked at him as in checking him from head to toe with a faint blush on her face. Whether she was this way from being tired after their sparring sessions or not, the boy was oblivious. The truth, though, was that indeed Yugo was having perverted thoughts, but she chose to keep it for herself. During their time together, the woman felt at ease with the blonde, often talking to him on various occasions and even sharing a couple of funny stories together. She also had the decency to respect Naruto's hard work to learn every bit of the tips she gave him regarding weapon fighting as well as every bit of information regarding Suiden chakra, which in 3 months, practicing, and the blonde already managed to create little whirlpools on the water. She was fairly confident that by the end of the training, Naruto would be well versed at the subject. Nevertheless, even with the interaction with him, one thing still didn't change since she left Konoha. The nightmares, although less constant, were still there, and when they came, she just couldn't sleep afterwards. She would then get up and look at the waterfall in front of her, wondering about how much her life changed because of what happened. Before the invasion, she was the skilled Anbu Kunoichi and future wife of Gekko Hayate. Now though, she's nothing but an empty shell of her former self. Closing her eyes, she remembered how it was to feel his touch once more, to hear his never-ending coughs, which were a way he found for enemies to underestimate him from thinking he was sick. She, then, opened her eyes to look at the waterfall some more, before sighing in dismay at what happened with her. However, when she turned and went back to sleep, she suddenly lost her ability to breathe. Her eyes were as wide as saucers for what she was seeing in front of her. Right next to a sleeping Naruto, a Junin appeared wearing a bandana and the all-too-familiar sword passed from generations of the Gekko clan strapped to his belt. He was looking straight to Naruto for a while, before the man turned to his beloved wife. "It's good to see you, Yu-chan," greeted Hayate, before he saw Yugo flinch by the sudden heartache she was feeling at the moment. In her dreams, she always wanted to talk to him at least one more time, to say how sorry she was from not arriving at the place earlier, thus preventing his death. Hey. 8. Hayate-kun, how, you're dead. I. Saw you myself, she tried to speak, but it was very difficult considering the circumstances. I'm indeed dead, Yu-chan. However, that doesn't mean I can't talk to you, right? After all, it's not every day I'm granted the opportunity to speak with you, said Hayate, before he looked back to Naruto in contemplation. Yugo was finding strange that Hayate would do that, but seeing her dead fiancé once more was all that mattered right now. I remember him from the Chunin exams I proctored. He was quite adamant on winning against the Inuzuka that, even though he was beaten severely, he never admitted defeat and managed to win the battle in the end. He may be young, but I can see a lot of willpower in him. Sandame thinks he possesses the will of fire he speaks so much about, and I can very well see great things for him in the future. Wouldn't you agree, Yugo-chan? Asked Hayate. What do you mean? Asked Yugo, but was interrupted by her fiancé, as he explained. You've been spending a lot of time with him these days. I know that because I never stopped watching you from above. I could see how proud you were when he managed to deliver a solid blow with his bow staff, and I even saw how you're looking at him when he got out of the river. Even though I admit I was kind of jealous from above, laughed Hayate, before seeing Yugo's flustered look. It's been a long time since my death, Yugo-chan. You can't just keep doing this to yourself. Endless nightmares, thoughts of regret from thinking that you could have prevented everything from happening. You deserve to move on with your life. You deserve to be happy, advised Hayate, before he once more looked at Naruto as in giving the hint to the woman. However, before she could ask the man why he was talking about this, she noticed that his spirit began to fade, before he was completely gone from the world, but his message managed to echo once more. Move on with your life, Yugo-chan, I'll be up there protecting you. Hayate. No, come back please. I want to talk to you some more. Hayate. Screamed Yugo, not even aware of the fact that she was dreaming about everything. Hearing the constant screaming, Naruto decided to check what was happening, and he approached Yugo's tent and heard she screaming the name Hayate over and over. He, then, decided to wake her up in order to wake up from a possible nightmare. Yugo, wake up, Yugo, said Naruto as he placed his hands on her shoulder before sharing her. The woman suddenly opened her eyes, before the first thing she noticed was Naruto and that she was inside her tent the whole time. Naruto, what happened? Why did you wake me up? Asked Yugo as she sits from her position, while scratching her eyes. You were screaming the whole time about Hayate. I thought you were having a nightmare. I'm sorry, said Naruto, before Yugo dismissed the need of apologies, before getting up from her tent and walking outside, still wondering if she was dreaming or not. However, since she was able to feel Naruto's hands on her shoulders and the wind adjourning her features, her question was answered. The dream was so real, though, she wondered. Her heart was in pain the whole time as her conversation with her dead fiancé progressed. In the end, though, she didn't know if what happened was real or just an effect of her subconscious playing tricks with her mind. She was wondering about her dream so much, that she even forgot who was standing behind her. There was no awkward moment, because no one ever threw their clothes off in order to sleep, hence why Naruto was in regular black paints and dark gray shirt and Yugo was with the black Anbu paints in her fishnet shirt. Yugo-san, I didn't mean to wake you up, it's just, said Naruto trying to apologize, but he stopped once she turned to address Naruto. You don't need to apologize, Naruto, really. I was indeed having a nightmare of sort. Explained Yugo, thus easing Naruto's anxiety of ruining a person's beauty sleep. Silence, then, ruled their brief conversation as the woman started contemplating the sky to see if what she dreamed about was real or not. Naruto, for his part, knew something was wrong the minute he looked at her face, or rather her long-lost look. She, then, turned and walked straight for her tent as she passed Naruto without saying anything. In the dream, Hayate would look at her while saying she needed to move on with her life, but surely he couldn't be meaning what she thought he was. Sure, Naruto was a nice person, devoted to his life as a shinobi and also good company for conversations. She even remembered the blonde's physical attributes as very attractive. However, she couldn't even picture her together with him, the same way she was with Hayate. If you want to talk about it, I'm all ears, advised Naruto, thus earning her attention. Thanks Naruto, but is nothing really. It was just a nightmare after all. I'll go to sleep. Good night, greeted Yugo, not even wanting to dwell on the subject of trusting the boy that much, as she slowly walked towards her tent. I know that look on your face, Yugo-san, he started talking, well aware that she was listening every word of it, since she stopped dead on her tracks. That look of pain from what happened in the past, you constantly shout to the heavens as to why it had to happen with you of all people, and the constant feeling of regret you develop afterward, convincing you that it's your entire fault for what happened, even though you couldn't ever predict the results. Yeah, I know that look very well, explained Naruto as he looked at the waterfall, not even aware that the very woman he was addressing to was looking straight at his back with wide eyes. You got that just by looking at my eyes? Asked Yugo, still shocked that the blonde just now described everything she was feeling. Not only that, but also hearing you in your sleep this entire time. I felt like asking you about it, but I never meant to pry, so I kept my mouth shut about this. Also, when we're sparring, sometimes I had to use chakra to be able to block your fierce attacks, which carried more strength than finesse. I always figured that just like everyone, you two had your own bad story to cope with, explained Naruto, earning a nod from Yugo as she had the decency to look down in sadness. She really considered bottling up these emotions and hoped to get pasted this on her own, from fear of being misunderstood by her peers, who in turn, also had their respective bad stories and supposedly managed to get pasted it. However, for some strange reason, she thought she could actually trust the blonde not to judge her, and thus she decided to open the barrier she kept up for so long. Why don't we go closer to the river so we can talk? Advised Yugo, earning a nod from Naruto as he followed the woman until she took a seat 2 inches from the margin and started talking. It happened the day before the sand sound invasion on our village, as my team happened to be the ones responsible for performing some routes throughout the Konoha's urban territory. Nothing out of ordinary happened, as per usual, and our team was about to end the shift when the sun was up the next day. However, one of my teammates found a dead shinobi on top of a roof, carrying a fatal wound from a Fudan technique, explained Yugo as fresh tears began to fall from her eyes, but she continued, nonetheless. Turned out that the shinobi was none other than my fiancé Gekko Hayate, said Yugo, as she burst into tears, while Naruto stood there shocked. He remembered the guy from that hosted the second part of the Chunin exams and wondered, at the time, why he wasn't present for the third part. Instead he was replaced by a man named Shiranui Genma. Looking at the woman crying her hearts out, Naruto immediately let go of his wondering and embraced the woman in a tight hug as she let every tear from her eyes and every air from her lungs on Naruto's strangely comforting chest. She screamed at her fiancé for leaving her, she screamed at the bastard who killed him, she screamed at Kami for doing this to her, taking away Hayate from her life. Naruto, meanwhile, was caressing her hair gently while expressing some kind words for Yugo. His intention was immediately resumed to being there for the woman in hopes of curing her from her depression. The blonde felt Yugo tightening the embraces to receive more comfort, only for Naruto to understand the hint and bring her head even closer to his body as he continued to caress her hair. Some minutes later, the woman's tears were beginning to subside and she stopped screaming, probably because her vocal cords were beginning to hurt, at least that was what Naruto thought. Yugo, however, was just feeling comfortable right there on Naruto's chest. It wasn't long until Yugo closed her eyes right there and then. Naruto, seeing this, smiled and closed his as well, sleeping with his head on top of hers. When the sun appeared, Yugo woke up after, strangely, one of the best sleeps she had in years and looked up to see Naruto there as well with her the entire time. She, then, backed away from him a little bit, while never once stopping to look at his cerulean blue orbs and that big comforting smile of his. Feeling better, Yugo? Asked Naruto, before he saw the woman nod with her head. Words didn't need to be exchanged between them now, both would get their answers just by looking at each other. Both of them heard Jiraya giggling like a maniac. The man witnessed everything, of course, as he was well versed in espionage, and Naruto and Yugo both knew that the pervert would definitely put them together on his book in the future, if the frantic scribbling was any indication. It didn't matter, though, as both of them as Yugo felt like a weight the equivalent of a ton of bricks was lifted from her shoulder and Naruto was just at ease by helping the woman be at ease. Okay, that's about it for this chapter. Next chapter, Naruto and Co. will return to Konoha and my version of the Shippuden series will begin. With a different Naruto, stronger, wiser, faster and, committed, who knows, right? I enjoyed speaking about Naruto and Yugao's interaction and I hope you guys will enjoy reading about it. See ya next time. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys liked it. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like for more what ifs and support the author. See you guys in the next video.